Hi, Mike and Brad. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having us.
So I'm really excited to speak to you guys because one of my dreams when I was a student in college was to design for the sports and entertainment industry. And your agency, Torch Creative, have done fantastic designs for many businesses, but your work on the entertainment and sports side is really, really impressive. And for our listeners, here are just a few of their clients: the NBA, NHL, Minor League Baseball, Star Wars, Disney, Lucasfilm, and a bunch of recognizable Division I universities. Amazing work, guys. Where can people see your designs?
Thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Our website is torchcreative.com. Our Instagram is, oh gosh, I knew you were going to ask me that. Twitter is @torch_creative. And we're fairly new to Instagram. Our Instagram is just torch_creative.
You guys need to definitely check out their work while we're having a conversation. And Mike and Brad, can you both introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your primary roles for your agency?
Sure. I guess I'll go first. I guess we'll go alphabetical. I'm Brad Bishop, one half owner of Torch Creative, and Mike and I both have the role of designers, art directors, creative directors, account service, billing and estimates. What else do we add in there, Mike?
We wear all the hats of Torch Creative, let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then,
no, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say, I'm Mike Thurman, and I'm the second partner in Torch Creative, and I actually went to school at Texas Tech University. Get your guns up, and we've now been Torch Creative officially for little over 15 years at this point.
And Brad, I'm a graduate of East Texas State University, which was now about a year after I graduated, became part of the Texas A&M University system. So it's now Texas A&M University Commerce.
When you both started Torch Creative, did you guys know the sports and entertainment industry would be the big part of your clientele, or did that just happen to be strategic or more organically?
I think, Brad and I both came up in the Dallas area with a couple of bigger agencies, nationally known agencies, your typical ad promotions agency, design firm, stuff like that. So we've known each other for a long time, and we've worked together for a long time as well prior to starting Torch. And I know that we're both big sports junkies. Obviously, growing up in Dallas, we're huge Cowboys fans. We're basically fans of all things Dallas, Cowboys, Mavericks, Rangers, etc. And, we were just talking back in the mid-'90s prior to, we're dating ourselves a little bit, but this was before the Internet became as universal as it is now. We just did... we would see stuff about, hey, the Patriots came out with a new logo, or hey, the Broncos came out with a new logo. So we used to have conversations all the time about sports logos, and hey, wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be awesome to be able to do that? So, we got on the Internet. We found we found a site at the time, sportslogos.net, that was dedicated to sports logos, and they had a message board. So we did a lot of research via the message board and started to see names popping up, the same names popping up when a new logo was released. And that became kind of the genesis of Torch, or what would become Torch, because we said, you know what? These certain firms are doing these logos. What if we could do that?
Yeah, I think when we discovered a few of the agencies that did this, we were like, oh, wait a minute, there are people out there that do this for a living and get paid to do it. They didn't just appear out of thin air kind of thing, which, prior to, like Mike said, prior to the Internet, you just really didn't know if doing something like this was even an option. And then, like I said, once the internet really became a tool while you're at an agency for different types of things, you quickly realize, oh, okay, there are people out there that do this, that do get paid for it. It is a legitimate business.
One of my curiosities, anytime someone gives a agency or a designer a chance to do their work, that has to be vetted through, and they have to make sure that you guys can do the work. And I would assume these big clients just don't trust anybody, right? So how did you get them to trust Torch Creative?
I guess it's kind of the what you might imagine for any agency is you start small. We had developed a relationship with the creative director at the NHL. The NHL was having a lockout, and he had left and had gone to another agency. And we had done some small freelance projects for this particular agency, so he was familiar with us. So when he left and the NHL started back up, and he left and went back to his old job, he called us and said, hey, it's nothing much, it's nothing big, but I have this small project I think you guys would be great for. So that it was very small, and then it kind of grew organically. You do one project and you do a really good job, and then that kind of begins the building of the trust factor.
And in the collegiate world, similarly, because we kind of parallel pathed everything. We kind of set out with a plan. So we said, okay, obviously we want to go on the professional side, the professional leagues. We want to go this route. On the collegiate side, we want to go this route. So before actually having a portfolio of legitimate projects, we did a bunch of spec work, which basically means we took on our projects internally. Like we would give each other a project, say, okay, we'll go work on this. And it would be, a team or something. And so we would do the spec work in addition to some of the actual work we were doing locally. So we would do these teams, and then we ended up going to a licensing company in the collegiate world and showed them some of our spec work. We actually met with them. Somehow we got an interview. So we went in there with our spec work and showed them what we had, and I guess they saw enough to kind of trust us. So they put us in touch with some of the smaller colleges at the time, and so it kind of went from there, like Brad said. So, in addition to working with some of the smaller universities, we were also doing the NHL work, which then led to some NBA work, and on and on and on. It started to grow from there, and that's kind of how it came about.
But it was very organic. Yeah.
And for people who are young creatives, even small projects that are given to you, whether that's a flyer, anything small, right? And you do a good job, that usually leads to bigger opportunities. And also what I got from what you're saying is opportunities might come, and when those come, try to hit those out of the park, and they may lead to bigger projects.
Yeah, and on top of giving it your absolute best, we quickly learned too that a lot of it is relationship building. So not only do you want to do a good job, but you want to be nice to people, and you want to, just like I said, build a relationship with them, because you don't know, they may be at one company for a while or one team for a while, and then they decide to move on. And if they move on, there's a good chance they may need you for another project. So that relationship building is equally as important as working on and doing a good job on your projects or your portfolio or whatever it is.
Yeah, I would say we were pretty tenacious in trying to build those relationships. The second we got an NHL project, we were on the phone with other people saying, hey, we work with the NHL. So we were able to use that as the icebreaker, and that led to other projects. And, so we were very, like I said, tenacious. We were always on the phone. We were always sending email. A lot of it, led to other projects. And, I feel like then we put the passion into the work that we had. Like you said, well, it didn't matter what it was. If it was a small project, we were going to make it the best that it could be, and then put that into our portfolio. And eventually, those portfolio pieces started to replace our spec work. So instead of having, made up projects, we were actually having legitimate projects which we were able to build on.
Well, congratulations for infiltrating that industry. And I don't know anything about this industry, but I would have to guess the rarity of firms or agencies or designers that actually do this type of work. It can't be more than 100 or 200 places. I mean, this has got to be a small industry. You're talking about the big four, right? I mean, NHL, baseball, NBA, and football. And I know there's the universities as well, but it has to be a small pool of people that do this type of work. So that's amazing that you guys got in there, from an initial just thought and idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you're right. It is. It's a very, very small niche or niche market, and that's why no matter what you get, what you do, you got to give it your all.
Yeah, it's like when we said earlier about doing the research in the 90s about who was doing this. At that time, there were maybe 2 or 3 firms/artists that were actually doing this, and now there are a lot more. And that becomes a challenge, of course, because now you're dealing with in the sports world, it's I guess everything's finite, but in the sports world, it's very limited. There are only, as you said, the big four, and then there are the colleges and universities. Now, there are a number of colleges and universities, but quite a bit. I think there's over 3,000. But still, it's not like coffee shops. It's not like you're designing a logo for a coffee shop, which are everywhere. And then you've got kind of that added wow factor of being in the sports industry. So a lot of designers want to get into this industry, but it is very tough and it is highly competitive. You find out really quickly if you. So it's definitely an interesting field to be in. That's for sure.
That leads to something like I think most people would be very interested about is to hear about the process. Just pick one of your sports clients. Can you just give an overview of what they ask for when they approach you with a project, your process, and what you turn in to make those clients very happy?
Boy, that's a good one.
There's a lot there, I know.
Which is fine. Well, for example, the Southern Illinois University, they're the Salukis, which is a dog that is of Egyptian descent. So it's not your typical eagle or lion or tiger or mascot like that. It's a very unique mascot. They had a brand update several years ago that they had basically had abandoned. They were just using I believe a ligature, Mike, right?
Anagram, yes, yeah. Absolutely.
And for that one, you're tackling something very unique. So you've really got to research this animal, try to find the characteristics or the traits, or just try to find some type of uniqueness to it that you can then try to capture in the logo. I know we studied just as many images of a Saluki we could find. We did dozens upon dozens of sketches, and even tried an Egyptian angle or an Egyptian theme to those concepts to see if that would work. We did quite a bit of exploration. One of the things that we have done and have always done, and it goes back to our design school training in college, was we sketch everything out. We don't start on the computer. Everything is literally pencil and paper. Just to keep it loose, to try to find that thing, that angle, or that concept, to really keep it as unique as we could. and I'll let Mike take over from there, because it's really I did a bunch of concepts. He did a bunch of concepts. His concept was the one that ended up ultimately being chosen. And on our end, since we're both the designers, whoever's concept is chosen kind of becomes the lead and the kind of manager of that project as it moves forward.
Yeah, and we, as Brad said, we did a bunch of sketches, and I think for all of our projects, we do, before we even start the sketch process, we'll do some research just to see what's out there. Whether it's, like for the Salukis, since we're talking about that project, we may look up wolves, we may look up coyotes, and any other kind of canine-related logo, to just kind of see what's out there. And we always say that we use that as a roadmap as where not to go, because we're trying to find that uniqueness, because we don't want to be a copycat of anybody else that's out there, because, again, there are a lot of logos, so we're trying to find that unique roadmap. And, once the client then locks in on the sketches, then we just hop on the computer to just try to bring those sketches to life, and we really work hard on the computer to really fine-tune the angles. One of the things that we always like to stress is if you're drawing an animal or a person or whatever it is, make sure the proportions are correct. I mean, obviously you can do caricature versions of them where you exaggerate those proportions, but you want the proportions to look correct, because you want a non-creative person, or you want just the average fan, when they see the logo, you want them to immediately know what it is. So, and that all comes down to proportions, because I know in the past we've drawn horses, or we've seen horse logos that the proportions are off, and so it looks kind of like an odd dog of some kind. So you gotta be real careful to make sure the proportions are right. And one of the things that we do at Torch is, Brad will really push me to make sure that my proportions are right, and likewise I'll push him to make sure the proportions are right. So there's a lot of back and forth when we get on the computer to really fine-tune everything. So then once we lock down on the final logo or mark, then we'll do the other elements. Let's say it's a word mark, where it says Salukis, or we'll do a font, or we'll do whatever other elements are required in the project that tie back to the main primary logo. So we try to find that uniformity. We try to find that cohesiveness within the project to give the overall branding identity the best, again, cohesiveness that you can find.
When they approach you with a project like this and they want to see ideas, is that like a 2-week process, a 6-week process? I hope it's not a next day process, but how does that look like?
No, and I can tell you that, back in the agency world days, we would get, 3 hours to come up with some concepts. And that's one of the things that we were like, okay, when we go to work for ourselves, we are not doing that, because it just doesn't work. When we get a project and it is signed, contract signed, we put together a schedule. We require, depending on the size of the project, but more often than not, we require a minimum of 3 weeks for what we call the research sketch exploration phase. And depending on the project, some projects do have a little bit tighter timeline, but that's kind of our average. It's a minimum of 3 weeks, so we can really spend the time to put into, trying to find and develop something really unique, or unique solution.
And it can go up as high as 6 weeks sometimes, just depending on what it is. And if we get on a creative roll, we just keep churning them out. We don't put a limit on how many concepts we're going to show to the client, because it seems like clients always want to know, well, are we going to get 3? Are we going to get 5? We always say you're going to get the best of what we got. Yeah. And if Torch feels like we've got 10 strong concepts, then you're going to see 10 strong concepts. If we only have 3, then you'll see 3. But we try real hard to make sure that the concept sketches that we're showing are the best of what we have to offer.
A couple questions here to follow up on that. Do you guys sketch together in the same room? Do you guys go to one room to the other and you guys share your concepts later? And how valuable is it that you guys both are creative and you guys bounce ideas off each other, like that magic process of you guys brainstorming and sharing your ideas to each other?
Sure. Well, we are extremely fortunate to be able to work from home. We only live, probably 10, 15 minutes from each other. But we do, and of course, prior to the pandemic, we would meet for lunch or meet somewhere and sketch out like just little thumbnail kind of things, or we would work on thumbnails for a few days. And hey, let's meet up and we'll review everything, and just bring our sketchbooks with us and sit down at lunch and go over stuff and choose the ones that we think work. Once we've kind of settled in on ideas and concepts, then we go back to our own home studios and really sit down and fine tune those sketches to present, to the client. It's not not a real crazy answer, but it's pretty. I don't know. I mean, it's not. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it just depends on the project. Sometimes we'll get together and, like Brad said, and we'll hammer out a lot of concepts, at the same time. But more often than not, it's kind of like he goes off to his corner and I go off to my corner, and we just try to sketch whatever we can, without running it past each other at first, because we're just trying to churn out as many ideas as we can. And then, like Brad said, then from those, once we get back together and reconvene to look at all of the different thumbnails, then we'll pick and choose the ones that we think will work best.
And and just to touch on that, several years ago, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, one of the founders of Pixar wrote a book. It's called Creativity, Inc. And one of the sections in that book was all about presenting your ideas to the other creatives in the group, whether it's one person or several people. And just being able to hear their thoughts on taking it to the next level, improving it, really trying to take a core of an idea and make it better and take it to the next several levels, right? That book was really, really awesome for us because it just showed us that, hey, you may sketch something out, think, man, this is a really good idea, and then present it to the other people you work with or the other people in your group. And especially if you respect them and respect the work that they've done, listen to what they have to say in the hopes of making it even better, taking it to that next level. And we really try to do that. So any creatives out there that, want something to help them and inspire them creatively, that book, it's right here, Creativity, Inc. by Ed Catmull, was really, really good for that.
Thank you. It definitely is something that would be really valuable to know, and thank you for sharing that book. I would definitely like to check it out myself.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to assume that when you guys share ideas with each other, you guys are pretty candid about what you guys think, right? There's no room for holding back. I'm not saying you have to be really harsh on each other, but you guys say what you guys think about what works, what doesn't work. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I mean, to just touch on what Brad said about Ed Catmull's book, again, that book kind of reaffirmed some of the stuff that Brad and I were already doing instinctively, because, again, it teaches, or the book talks about the whole team process of creativity. And Brad and I, we've had a very, like I said, we've known each other for 25 years, roughly. So we've got a really good working relationship as well as a personal relationship. So when we show each other concepts, you have to have thick skin internally, because you've got to be able to work through some of those dynamics. Okay, well, I like this concept over here, but I don't think it fits the project. Or, this is a really nice concept, but it looks like this logo over here. So there's a lot of back and forth that we have to navigate internally. We've been very fortunate in that we've been able to do this all these years, and we may have some internal disagreements, but it's nothing earth-shattering. I mean, we're able to work through it. In this industry, you have to have a very, very thick skin, because once you get over the initial internal discussion, then you go to the client, who also has their opinions on what they're looking at. Sometimes those opinions are great and very, very positive, and then sometimes you hear stuff that you don't want to hear. So you've got to be able to, defend your work, but you also have to be able to listen to it, get over the emotional reaction, and then get to the professional reaction. Say, okay, what are they saying? You kind of pick through the feedback, and like I said, get over the emotional part, but get it down to the nuts and bolts of the feedback, and then apply that to the logo to make sure that you're hitting.
And on the at the same time, if you've got a concept you're working on and the other guy isn't quite feeling it, Mike may show me something, I'm like, it's just, I think these other concepts are better. This one's really not doing it for me. But he really believes that he's got an idea here. And if he says, look, I really think this could be something, I really think we could, sell this to the client, I think they would really like it, I think it would work. If he's really, really, I guess, sold on it himself, even though I may not be feeling it, I'm like, okay, well, if you can sell it in, if you think it works, after all these years, I trust you. My thought is it's not quite there. My thought is, hey, I like these other concepts better. But if you feel strongly enough about this one and you think you can sell it into them, then I'll support you. And that's not, it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens sometimes. And sometimes when one of us really sells it to the other one that, hey, I think this concept would work, 99% of the time, if it does get chosen, it does work.
Typically, when you're turning in your presentation, what does that look like? I mean, I know the pandemic makes things different now, but before the pandemic, did you guys present it in boards? Was it in a presentation digitally? Were you in a room where you get to speak to it, or did you just send them the files and you just waiting for feedback? How did that look like?
I'd probably say all of the above. The great thing about technology today, and especially with Zoom and being able to share your screen, over the last several years, everything has gone pretty much digital. Sometimes clients will want to fly us out and make the presentation in person, which we're totally always up for. And when we do that, I don't know, almost always they have a meeting room or a boardroom type setting with a screen where we can, there's been plenty of times where we'll just Apple Play something, from a laptop or iPad. We'll just Apple Play it and put it straight up on the screen, and run through and present it that way. Back when we first got started, we did have a projector, and sometimes we would have to travel somewhere and take the projector with us. But the technology has really caught up, so it's pretty simple nowadays. And I don't even know when the last time was that we've done printouts.
It's been some time.
Yeah,
I know that.
Luckily it's been quite a while.
But we will. Sometimes we, if we're not doing Zoom, we'll send a PDF that's password protected. So when we get on the phone, we'll give them the password to unlock it, and then we'll be able to walk them through the concepts step by step. So we're pretty flexible. It doesn't matter. If we got to draw it in sand, we'll do it. But we're pretty flexible as far as how to present the work.
And finally on this, and I don't need to know client names, but is it ever possible that you turn in some designs and the client may be on the fence on a particular design, and maybe you had to talk him or her to say, no, this is this might be the right solution for you, or it is the right solution for your mascot logo or event design. Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah. It's a little easier today because I think we've got some skins on the wall that hopefully will back up our justification. But that's not to say, I mean, that we don't have the problems today. I mean, we still occasionally will have to, I won't say nudge, convince or I don't know what the proper word is, but we'll talk to them and we'll say, look, we really think this is the route you need to go. More often than not, we're able to sell them on that idea. Occasionally, they'll go with the concept that we're not necessarily on board with, or fully. I guess we may think the other concept's stronger, but more often than not, clients will listen to us. It's rare that we get pushback. I don't think that happens all that often.
Yeah, and a couple things that happen there. I would say the majority of the clients really enjoy seeing pencil sketches for a presentation. And now with a lot of the new Photoshop brushes, you could do a lot of really nice sketching in Photoshop. But they really enjoy seeing a pencil sketch in the initial idea phase. Some clients see it, love it, can pick out the one they like and kind of see how it will become, the new brand. Some clients have an extremely difficult time with a pencil sketch. That is where we really have to help them, and it's not a big deal. Some people, like I said, can grasp it. Some people can't. It's our job to kind of sell them on it. So we'll try to find, if they're having trouble, we'll try to say, okay, well, just if you had to pick one, which one do you lean towards? And usually once we get them to lean in a specific direction that they like and we get on the computer, then it really brings it home. The other thing you have to be very careful of, and we've had creative directors tell us this, from many, many years ago, and even professors in college, never present a concept that you don't like. Never just never stick something in a presentation just because you don't feel like you have enough concepts to present, because 99.99999% of the time they choose the one that you hate, that you don't like. It happens every time, and we've been guilty of it from time to time. And so that's when now one of the good things about having a business partner is if the other person says, look, that one's just not working, if you'll sleep on it for 24 hours or so and then come back and look at it the next day, every time you're like, yeah, he's right, that just doesn't work. And I would kick myself if we presented it and they liked it and it just never got to where we wanted it to get.
I promise you I'm going to get to other questions, but this stuff is just really interesting to me. And on the client side, who is actually making that decision? Is it the marketing vice president? Is it if it's a university, is it a university president? Who actually is saying yes to this? Is it a committee on the other side?
Yes to all of that.
Okay.
It's at least on the university side, more often than not, it's a committee, a logo committee, and we always get the $1 million question about how many people should be in the committee. We don't have the magic answer, but we think as close to 5 as possible, because you don't want too many voices in the room, because that just muddies the water. Sure. But you have, like I said, you have your committee, and it may include the licensing director, or it may include the vice president of marketing, or whomever. As long as you got the key constituents, and hopefully the president or the athletic director is in there as well, because you want them to be the voice for the brand identity. Once that comes out, they have to be the spokespeople for the new identity. So you need buy-in from them so that they can then carry the torch, no pun intended, to the new identity. But oftentimes that committee will then go up the ladder to the chancellor or the provost, however the university set up, and that will. Then it kind of gets beyond us at that point. But the upper management at the university will have the ultimate say.
Yeah.
When you turn in the final deliverables, are you turning it to them? Obviously, the Native Art Files and their design team takes that and reproduces more, shirts, banners for events. Are you part of that thing, or at that point, your team, Torch Creative, steps away and you let them do their thing with the with the art?
Yeah, at that point, we'll deliver them all of the final art files, and then they literally take the ball and run with it. A lot of colleges work with licensing companies. They have a licensing company that manages their brand. So the licensing company will generally take the logo, and then they begin the process of distributing it to the licensees that produce the merchandise, and goes from there. Yeah, I mean, they may come back to us from time to time if they've got some type of specific color arrangement. They're like, hey, we actually need this in blue because it's going to go on this background, or those type of things. But generally, once we've completed the art and everything is signed off, then it's passed on to them.
Now, being a creative and an artist, there's a lot of parts that are fantastic about it. One in particular is sitting back and seeing people react to your work. What's the best part of maybe attending an event where you see your work everywhere? I can't even imagine to see it on TV, on Sports Center, wherever it's print. Like, tell me how that feeling feels like.
I'll let Mike go first on that one.
I mean, we say it all the time. It never, ever gets old. We're in the middle of the Stanley Cup playoffs right now as of this phone call. And to see, all the work that we did for the Stanley Cup and the playoffs, and just to see that, the cup illustration on center ice, and then see the patches on their jerseys, and it never, ever gets old. That's where coming back to being a fan, in addition to being the artist, I think that's where it all comes together. I know that we have collections of mini helmets, with the logos that we have. So we have mini helmets in our offices. We have tickets from the Cotton Bowl where we've done that stuff. We've got footballs. I mean, we've got everything, and it's just, like we said early on in the call, I mean, back in the day, we thought all of these logos were designed off in some fantasy land, and now to be on the inside of that fantasy land, it's great.
I tell you what's even more exciting. Obviously, turning on the TV or going to an event is, you see it. It's special. We're always taking pictures and tweeting stuff out from time to time. But seeing the unexpected logo in a day-to-day setting, like for instance, I was driving around here in Flower Mound, I don't know, a few months back, and the car stopped at a red light, and a car in front of me had the Montana State Bobcat on the back window, a decal on the back window. That was so cool and just so unexpected, because here all the way in Texas, someone has a Montana State Bobcat logo that we designed on their window. What are the odds of that? Or going to the gym and a kid walks in with a now I'm drawing a blank on what school, UIW, Incarnate Word, University of Incarnate Word in San Antonio. Someone walks in to a place that you're just not expecting, and they've got your work on their shirt. Seeing it like that when you're just completely not expecting it is even cooler.
My youngest son is a senior in high school, so obviously he's getting a lot of mailers from all the universities. And the other day, I checked the mailbox, and there was a mailer from the University of Northern Colorado, which we did. So like Brad said, seeing that stuff in the wild is very rewarding, fulfilling. And I get a kick. My wife, she understands what we do, but sometimes I don't think she gets gets it, you know what I mean? I don't think she gets it in its entirety. So occasionally, if we're on a trip or whatever, and she'll see some of our work, like Brad said, on a shirt or on a billboard or something, and to see her go, "Oh my gosh, that's your work," that's also fulfilling. Just to kind of get out of the office and see it out there. It never gets old, ever.
Have you ever come across anybody wearing the apparel and you've actually had a discussion and you had to tell them, I don't know how this would happen, but you were the designer of that logo?
Yeah, a couple of times. And sometimes they kind of seem confused, or they're just kind of like, "Oh, okay," and they don't really think much of it. You just kind of laugh and go on. I've never had a experience of me personally telling someone, "Oh yeah, we drew that, we created that," and they were like, "Oh, cool, I really like it," or whatever it may be. They're just kind of like, "Oh, all right, well, I'm going about my day here."
Yeah, unfortunately, some people don't get a kick out of it like we do.
Yeah.
So it's not a situation where they're like, "Hey, pull out the Sharpie. Can you sign the shirt?"
Yeah, I know that's not happened. Now we've seen tattoos of our logos, which is always crazy because you're like, I remember drawing that on my couch, and now you have it on your leg. That's quite interesting.
Wow. I'd like to go back to, just for anybody that wants to get into this, and I know because I'm in the field of graphic design, I can tell you that Torch Creative does some stellar work. And for somebody who in school, and I've taken logo classes and I've taken drawing classes, these marks that you're creating, they're not like they are Sal Bass or Paul Rand, like the IBM logo where it's simplistic and you can see it from afar. It has a different set of rules. Where did you guys learn to do that, the training? I mean, obviously, I didn't pick it up in school. I'm sure you guys didn't pick it up in school. Is that something that you just looked at a lot of references of how people who are successful doing this and you learned on your own?
First of all, thank you very much. We appreciate those compliments. That we really appreciate that. It's kind of yes to a lot of that. Mike and I both, when we were growing up, from a very young age, were just a couple of. I was known as a kid in school who could draw. That was it. That was the only thing I. Some kids were great athletes. I was just, oh yeah, that kid that could draw, and I was always drawing, and I was always drawing a lot of sports type things, and growing up in the 80s, and I graduated high school in 1990, so there was no computers, there was no graphic arts type stuff to study, so everything was hand drawn. When I then turned around and went to college that fall, computers, I don't even think computers were really integrated into the creative world yet at all, so everything was drawn by hand. Even typography was drawn by hand. So when I was in school, much like our process we have today, we would have to hand draw out, whether it was a logo or an ad or whatever we were working on in school. It was all hand drawn, and you would go in and present it to the teacher of the class. And it was in this kind of raw and really nice, tight, hand drawn stage. Once you kind of got feedback and you worked through it, then you would get into the color process. But both of us from a very young age were hand drawing everything. And one of the things that I think Mike and I realized when we got into this avenue of graphic design, it's almost a combination of illustration and graphic design. It's like you mentioned, the Paul Rand and Saul Bass guys, everything was very shape-oriented, a lot of 90-degree angle type things, and like you mentioned, very simplistic. But they were all, you could draw those just out of shapes. What we do, especially if it's a lion or a tiger, animal or an event, whatever, I mean, there's a lot of illustration technique that would really benefit you if you have that and you work on that in order to achieve what we're able to achieve.
And I know, like most designers, when you're young, I mean, you're just drawn to visual things in the out there. I know that, I loved I loved really nice illustrations. I loved movie posters. I loved all of that stuff. But I knew early on, at least I can't speak for Brad, but at least for me, for whatever reason, I was always drawn to logos, whether it was band logos, or sports logos. I love seeing portraits. In fact, I used to draw portraits of football players and stuff like that when I was younger. But for whatever reason, the logos were always where my focus was. And, once I became a professional, like every graphic designer, I suspect, I was doing everything, whether it was a table tent or a poster or a flyer or whatever. But it was the logo project, the occasional logo project that would come along that really, lit my fire. So I think, I don't know, maybe it was just instinctive or just part of my nature to be drawn to logos. So I think having that appreciation for the logos, NFL, I grew up like Brad, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, so that was my formative years. I used to think the NFL logos, I still think that for that matter, that the NFL logos were incredible. I loved seeing them on the helmet. I just thought it was great. So redrawing those as a child, I think kind of planted the seed for this industry, or for us being in this industry, or for me being in this industry. It was just something that I was drawn to, and I like the simplicity. I like taking, yes, we could draw a lion or a tiger, if we sat down with pencil and paper and all the shading, but I like breaking it down to its basic elements of how many curves can we put in it and still make it a tiger. And it was always very fascinating for me. I love that puzzle solving.
Fantastic. Just to get back to and you guys touched upon this in your background, you guys came from a time where you used to hand draw your typography. So during that time when you wanted to get a profession like this and there wasn't the internet to kind of look around and say, hey, mom, dad, look, there's people that do this for a living. They get paid. I can support myself. How did you guys know that this was the industry you guys wanted to get to when you didn't have readily a lot of information on it?
Sure. Well, I can tell you my story, hopefully pretty quick, and Mike can certainly tell you his. It wasn't too long ago. I was speaking at a high school, and that question came up from a kid who was actually really good. He had a lot of talent, and his question was, how did I convince my family that I could do this and make a living and hopefully make a good living and support myself and all those types of things? He said, what was your backup plan? And it kind of shocked me because no one had ever asked me that really. And I said, man, I didn't have a backup plan. I had to make this work because I really didn't have any interest in doing anything else. And I'm really not good at anything else. And then to flip that over to, my parents were always encouraging me to draw because, they knew it's what I loved to do, and I was always drawing stuff. And if I went for a period of time without drawing anything, my mom would be like, oh, well, what have you been doing? You haven't done a drawing in a while. What are you messing around with? They were extremely supportive of me to make a living doing this, even though they weren't creative at all, didn't have a creative bone in their body, didn't have any friends that were creative or anything. They were like, you have something. You need to pursue this. We have no idea where it's going to take you or what you can do, but don't give up on this. This is your thing. And so I was fortunate enough to have that, and then hearing this, this other young kid tell me that his family was like, well, you need a backup plan because, you're not going to make any money at this.
Yeah, and my situation was the same. Like Brad, I was the guy that could draw, so I was always drawing, and much like Brad's family, my family was very supportive as well, and they said, just go do what you do. So I started looking into, I think when I was in high school, I know there was a speaker that came into our art class that was a graphic designer, and I was kind of interested in that. So then I started to look into careers in art. And it was, you could be a fine artist and do the work for yourself. If you hit it, then you're going to be, very successful. But if you're not, you're going to be, flipping burgers somewhere as well. And then I also saw that you could actually get a job being an artist. And I was like, well, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to have a job drawing. Like we said earlier, we came up in the agency world. But once we locked in on Torch, it was full steam ahead at that point.
Well, and just to touch on that as well, right when I graduated high school, I actually thought I was going to be an architect, because I also took some architecture stuff like my senior year in high school, and very early on at the junior college I went to first. And when the curriculum required like 2 algebra classes, this was the days when you would go down to the school, stand in line at the registrar's office, and sign up for your classes. You had to do it in person kind of thing. Well, I was late, or somehow I had taken one algebra class. I missed the other algebra class I was going to take was full, so I had to pick a different math, and I signed up for trigonometry. And this friend of mine was like, you'll be fine. You could probably get a C in it. You'll be okay. Because I had to have these maths to be an architecture major. Probably second or third day in that class, I just got up and walked out because it was literally a foreign language to me. And I was taking I think it was a sculpture class, I think it was a sculpture class. There was a lady in the class, and she sat next to me, and we just began talking, and I think I must have been pretty depressed that day because I was like, I don't know what I want to do. There's no way I can be an architect because I can't get through math. And she says, well, why don't you go talk to my husband, who I can't remember if he worked or owned a graphic design firm in downtown Dallas in this building that is no longer there. It's called the White Swan Building, where several creatives used to be. And so, scared to death, little 19-year-old Brad goes down to this guy's studio, and I walked in, and it was the coolest thing I had ever seen. People, the stuff they were doing, it looked like a fun job, an awesome setting, and everyone was drawing the kind of stuff that I liked. And I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And he said, okay, well, here's where you need to go to college, and that was it.
That's a great story for both you guys. Just to be fair as well, because we've talked a lot about logos, but your portfolio shows a variety of different other works. What does Torch Creative do outside of that? Like, I know you guys do other things. Just to be fair, let's touch about capabilities.
Sure, Mike, you want to take that one?
Well, I think we've had this discussion with a number of artists over the years. When Torch first started, we did anything and everything graphic design related. We did websites, we did brochures and pamphlets, but I think we realized very quickly. Well, actually, we didn't realize. We kind of knew all along that we wanted to be logo guys, and that was really identity. We wanted to do brand identity, and that was kind of our focus. So as the project picked up in that arena, we just slowly started dropping off the websites, and because we were, even though we kind of could do websites, we weren't that good at it. If we're just being honest, we weren't that good at it, and so we kind of let the other stuff drop off and focus primarily on identity. So right now, just because we've been doing it for so long, I would say we're primarily identity guys. Now we do illustration. Don't get me wrong. We do a lot of illustration work as well, but it's identity and illustration
and typography. We've done quite a bit of custom type as well. A lot of our branding projects, we tend to do custom typography for those as well.
I didn't mention this earlier, but when you turn in a illustration logo, do you turn in a style guide on the do's and don'ts on how to use that logo?
That's one of the things that we offer, along with the estimate when we're estimating a project. And a lot of clients will ask for it. They say, okay, we need a style guide, like you said, the do's and don'ts. Some clients take us up on it and pay for it. We kind of have some different tiers we offer because, as you know, you can get really detailed with those, or you can kind of keep them somewhat kind of top-lined. And then some clients have folks on their side who can either plug the new logos into their existing style guide, or they can create a new one on their end.
And lastly, and this is probably my final question, and thank you guys. That's been really interesting. I mean, I've been in industry so long, I didn't know some of the stuff you were saying, so it's informational for me, so I hope it really is great information for everybody.
Yeah.
What do you guys define success? Like, what does that look like for you guys?
Wow, that's a good one.
It's funny because we've had this discussion before internally. Brad and I know we've talked about it before. When we were in the industry world or in the agency world, I think the path was, we were both creative directors at our particular agencies, and we probably could have pursued higher positions within those companies and I don't know, ultimately become CCOs, chief creative officer, whatever. We could have done that and probably would have enjoyed the perks and the salaries that came with that, and we could have gone to probably other agencies, but it just wasn't. At least for me, that wasn't in the cards. It wasn't something I was that interested in. I mean, obviously, I want to provide for my family and I want to make a living, but that wasn't the key driver for me. I wanted to have a career that I was very happy with, that I knew I was in a great spot for me emotionally and professionally, and we've found that. I mean, we've been very fortunate, and I'm very grateful that we've been able to do this. So being able to have Torch for as long as we've had it, and hopefully a lot longer, to me, that's success. I mean, yes, there is some financial benefit that comes from it, but it's not the driving force for me. I don't think it is for Brad either, but it's...
Yeah. I mean, we actually, one of the guys who owned the agency that we used to work for would always say, hey, do what you love, put your heart and soul into it, and the money will come. We've been around for a little over 15 years now, and as anybody can guess, when you work for yourself, you got highs and lows with the money, but if you stick with it and stick at it, it'll turn around. And we've experienced that. For me, I think success is if you can't wait to get out of bed in the morning to go to work because you love what you do so much, and you're able to support a family, go on vacation each year, and save for retirement, and you keep up with the just pace of inflation, and you got a good roof over your head, then I think you're successful. I don't think, to me, success isn't measured with how much is in your bank account. Success is just loving what you do and taking care of your family and enjoying it along the way.
And I know, to touch on that, in addition to, the business itself, and like we touched on earlier in the call, but to see the work that you do, to see people wearing it, to see people, I see it on TV, to see, like I said, have people tattoo your work on their bodies. I mean, to have that in addition to be able to support your family, that is the greatest success for me. I mean, I designed a lot of table tents and entry pads, sweepstake entry pads. I've done all that stuff. Nobody's gonna frame an entry pad, or an entry form. Nobody's framing that, but they'll frame your logo, and that's success.
Well, and a few years back, we spoke at a convention that was based around the creatives in the sports industry. And they had a speaker come in, and he talked about kind of similar success kind of things, and to what Mike just said. He goes, look, if you work hard, you can get a job at your more traditional design studio or ad agency, working on a bank or whatever it may be, and that's totally fine. But no one is tattooing the Chase Bank logo on their shoulder, and that really kind of sums it up for us. It's the things that we are fortunate enough to work on. Other people have just as equal a passion for it, so they're getting a tattoo, and they're buying the T-shirt, and they're putting that decal on the back window of their car, kind of thing,
And finally, wanted to say thank you to you guys. I think you mentioned this earlier, Brad, that you were speaking to a high school student. I have talked to other creatives that have run into both you guys and have so much complimentary things to say and how giving you guys are and giving advice. I want to thank you for coming in here and sharing your story. I think it's going to inspire a lot of future generation creatives. Wish you guys continued success to Torch. And once again, where can people find you again?
Yes. Well, thank you very much. We really appreciate that. We always tell people, whether they're in the industry or not, we're always up for talking design, talking sports design. We have people young and old will send us their portfolios, and we're happy to give feedback. We're happy to give advice. We tell people sometimes, hey, just make sure you have some thick skin, because we want to be honest. People were honest with us, and that's helped us over the years for sure. But our website is torchcreative.com. Our Twitter handle is @torch_creative, and then our Instagram is torch_creative.
Fantastic. Thank you again, guys. And until next time, goodbye.
Hey, thank you, Chris. We really appreciate it.
Chris, I do appreciate it. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Right.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.